I'll start with the part people don't believe. The first client died with his eyes open, as if he was still watching something crawl toward him from inside his own skin. I was the one holding the machine. I was the one who let the ink in. When the box arrived, it was covered in fingerprints that weren't mine. Not greasy prints, powder like the residue from a moth's wings. No return address. Just my shop's name, Nightjar Tattoos, scrawled in a hand that looked more like stitching than writing. Inside the box, 8 glass bottles nested in charcoal black packing straw. Each bottle had a paper label tied with waxed thread. No logo, no brand. Only a symbol, an eye crossed with a needle, and a word stamped in faded red. Bind. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I twisted a cap and watched the ink tilt against the glass. It moved too slowly, like cold honey, glossy and dark as a bruise. Something about it felt expensive, illicit. I raised the bottle to the light and, for a second, I thought I saw a ripple under the surface. My hand stilled. The ripple stilled. You're tired, I told myself. You've pulled 3 all-nighters this week. In my line of work, artists test new ink on pigskin or synthetic pads first. I did exactly that, or I thought I did. Because when I blinked, the test stencil was finished. Clean lines, smooth pack, and I had no memory of completing it. No time-lapse on my phone. No humming of the machine preserved in my mind. Just me, standing over a perfectly executed black, eye encircled by a ring of thorns. I must have blacked out. 10 minutes gone, maybe 20. The clock on the wall said 2:13. The next time I looked, it said 3:04. I laughed it off. Artists joke about flow state like it's a trance. Sometimes it is, but the absence felt wrong, not like focus, like a door opening and closing in a house I thought I was alone in. The first person to book with the new ink was a walk-in. His name was Owen. Nervous smile, polite, accountant hands with the nails trimmed short. He wanted something simple. A small solid black circle on his inner forearm, just under the crease of his elbow. For focus, he said, a point I can always come back to when my head gets noisy. I prepped the station. Clean barrier, clipcord cover, fresh needle. I set the bottle of bind on the tray and tried not to think about how heavy it felt. For its size. The shop was quiet. My apprentice Cass had gone home an hour before. Outside rain ticked against the front glass. The closed sign hung like a pendulum that had forgotten how to swing. Owen looked up from the release form. Is that a new brand? Yeah, I lied. High saturation, heels smooth. He nodded and settled back, arm turned up like an offering. I snapped on gloves, shaved the area, washed it with green soap and water, patted it dry. My hand hovered over the bottle's cap. When I twisted it, I smelled iron. Not rust, not blood exactly, but that wet metal edge like a coin. Pressed to the tongue, the first drops filled the cap like a black mirror. I dipped the needle. The ink held to the steel in a perfect teardrop, no drip. The machine buzzed low in my hand, a bee in winter waking too soon. You'll feel a scratch, I said. Breathe like you're blowing out candles. The needle touched his skin. The first line went in like it wanted to be there, no resistance. I packed the black in tight, small circles, smooth and slow. The ink sat under his skin like polished stone. 45 minutes, I thought. Maybe less. But again, the clock misbehaved. I glanced up and it read 9:17. The next time I looked, 10:03. The rain had stopped. The street outside was empty as an X-ray. Almost done, I murmured. Good, Owen said softly. Because it's moving. I paused. What is? The dot, he swallowed. It feels like it's breathing. I smiled to soothe him, but inside my chest, something echoed. I wiped. Perfect fill. No blowouts. No redness beyond the usual flush. Phantom sensations happen, I said, and told him about the brain mapping pain to phantom limbs, how our nerves love to suggest horror where there's only heat and needle, words I've used 100 times, words that usually help. Owen stared at the dot. He didn't blink. It just blinked. He whispered. The air in the room flattened. I leaned in. The circle was black, the kind that eats reflection. For a second, a lighter crescent skimmed its edge. Light, catching oil, a trick of the wipe. I told myself a lot of things. Then I saw it again. A shimmer that wasn't reflection but movement under the pigment, as if the ink had depth, as if something was swimming somewhere out of view. We're done, I said too quickly. I bandaged the piece, wrapped the tegaderm tight, explained aftercare. The dot pulsed once under the film, like a heartbeat pressed against clear tape. At the register, Owen hesitated with his wallet halfway out. He stared at the shop wall, at a framed photo of my mentor, Rook, dead 5 years now, and said, "How long do the side effects last?" "What side effects?" The whispering. His eyes flicked toward the back room, like someone standing just behind the door. I turned. The back room door was closed. I could see my own reflection in the black window glass. For a moment, the reflection looked like it was one breath behind me, a fraction late, watching me decide whether to open the door. Then a car passed outside, and the moving light stitched reality back together. "Stress," I said gently. "It's late. Drink water. Sleep. Text me if anything seems off. I mean actually off." He nodded, paid, left. The bell over the door made the small dying sound it always makes and then refused to ring again for the rest of the night. I peeled my gloves off and set the bottle of bind back in its box, the waxed thread rasping like dry grass against glass. I told myself I wouldn't use it again until I tracked down the supplier. Back home, the shop keys felt heavier than usual in my pocket. My apartment was a thin hallway twisted into a knot. I tossed my hoodie on the chair and stood in the bathroom, under white light. I washed my hands until the skin went pink and the smell of iron faded to nothing. I slept like a rock until I didn't. At 3:04 a.m., I woke standing in the kitchen with the freezer door open and frost on my fingers. My phone screen glowed on the counter. A text from an unknown number. "Do not cover the dot." A second text followed, fist tight and immediate, as if the sender could see me reading, "If you cover it, it wakes up." I typed, "Who is this?" No reply. The message thread title was a single symbol, the eye crossed with a needle. A cold draft moved through the apartment, though the windows were shut. From the bathroom, the mirror clicked. Not a crack, not glass settling, a click like a tongue against teeth. I left the lights on and still managed to lose time. When I checked the clock again, it was 5:17. Then it was dawn. Then it was the doorbell. It was Owen. He was paler than before and drenched, though the sky was clear. He held his arm away from his body like it was a sleeping animal he didn't want to wake. The tegaderm was still in place, but the bandage was dark, as if ink were a liquid that could sweat. "Please," he said. "I did what the text said. I didn't cover it in the shower. I kept it open, but I can't make it stop. It keeps asking to be seen." I let him in. I peeled back the film as carefully as I could. The dot beneath was a perfect circle, healed as if a week had passed overnight. The skin around it was cool to the touch. No swelling, no scab, no crust. But the surface wasn't matte anymore. It was glossy as an eye. And as I leaned in, something leaned back. A reflection should show me it showed someone. He looked like me if I'd been drawn from memory, details smudged. But the eyes were wrong, too black and too still. He was standing in a different room than mine, a room with no door. His lips moved. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw their shape, the slow O of open. Owen hissed, "Don't touch it." he said. "It doesn't like that." "What does it like?" His voice went flat, as if the answer were not his own, as if it had been fitted into his throat. "It likes being looked at." He swallowed. "It wants more of me." In the glossy black, a ripple formed and pushed outward, the surface doming like a bubble about to break. The thing beneath was pressing its face to the window, trying to learn how to breathe our air. "Hold still," I whispered, and reached for a saline bottle with one gloved hand. "We need to flush it." "Don't," Owen began, but too late. I squeezed. The first drop kissed the ink and fractured into spiderweb lines that raced across the circle before vanishing, absorbed. The ripple tightened. The dot narrowed like a pupil adjusting to light. For a heartbeat, the entire shop felt like an eye socket, and we were standing at its center. Something moved behind me. No footsteps, only awareness. The pressure you feel when a crowd breathes in unison. I turned and saw the back room door slowly swing open, though no one had touched it. The smell of iron rolled out, cold and sweet. On Owen's arm, the dot bulged once, twice, a fish head pushing against pond ice. A seam appeared, not a crack, but a smile without teeth. I saw something pale behind it, not skin, not bone. Something that knew the shape of us but wore it badly, like a glove inside out. Owen's knees buckled. He grabbed the counter, eyes locked on the dot. "It's telling me my name," he said, voice wet with terror. "It's telling me your name." The seam widened. The pale thing inside slid forward, pressing until the surface thinned to a trembling blister. The machine on my station hummed by itself, a hive waking. In the back room, the mirror clicked again. Tongue against teeth, a patient metronome. I reached for the machine without understanding why. My thumb found the switch. The buzz filled my skull. I dipped the needle into the cap of bind. The drop on the needle tip was too perfect, too spherical, reflecting a tiny, upside-down version of my face. "Don't," Owen croaked. "It wants you to." The lights flickered. The clock jerked. 9:17, 10:03, 3:04. Time lurched like a bad transmission. In the stuttering light, the dot opened. Something looked at me from inside him with my almost face, and its lips shaped. The same slow word I'd seen before. "Open." I drove the needle down. The needle touches the bulging eye as the thing inside begins to pull instead of push. And time drops out from under the narrator, snapping the chapter to black. I don't remember finishing the line. When I opened my eyes, the needle was humming against the metal tray, and Owen was slumped in the client chair. The air reeked of singed ozone and copper. My gloves were slick with black, thicker than ink, not quite blood. His arm was limp. The tattoo? Gone. The skin was unmarked, bare as if it had never been touched. I blinked hard. No redness, no swelling, no scar. The dot had vanished. Owen groaned, head rolling slightly. His pupils were blown wide, black swallowing the iris. But he was breathing. I leaned in to check his pulse. That's when I noticed it, my own hand, not trembling, not twitching, but tracing something into the air, a symbol. The eye crossed with a needle. Over and over, my index finger moved, slow and deliberate, as if remembering a dance from another life. I forced my hand down, but the muscle memory resisted. I gripped the edge of the counter just to feel something real. Owen stirred. "Where'd it go?" "You don't remember." He blinked. "I remember pain, and then a door." "What kind of door?" He looked at me, and for a moment I wasn't sure he saw me at all. "The kind you walk through and forget how to come back." I drove him to the ER, said he fainted. They ran tests, vitals, blood work. Everything came back normal, too normal. One nurse said he was the healthiest patient they'd had all night. When I returned from the vending machine with a bottle of water, his bed was empty, gone. Reception said he'd signed himself out. No contact info left behind. Just a name on the chart. And even that looked faint, like pencil over old paper. Back at the shop, I checked the CCTV, but every recording from that night was corrupted. Just static, then black, then me, frozen in a single frame, staring into the camera, not blinking, not breathing. I deleted the footage. The next few days blurred. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I kept the bottle of bind sealed, shoved in the back of a drawer beneath old coils and bent needles. But I could still hear it. Not the ink, the machine. Late at night, it would buzz once. A single chirp like a fly caught in a socket. Then silence. But each time I checked, the needle was clean. The power switch off. The cord unplugged. I started dreaming in symbols. The eye, the needle, a door that wouldn't open unless you bled on the handle. People with tattoos that crawled under their skin like ants. Cass, my apprentice, noticed something was wrong. You look like you've been living inside a thunderstorm. I shrugged. Weird week. She didn't press until she found the sketch pad. Dude, these weren't here last week. She flipped through page after page of unfamiliar drawings, symbols, spirals, anatomy studies of creatures that didn't exist. Mouths where there shouldn't be mouths. Bones shaped like keys, all done in my hand. But I didn't remember any of it. I told her it was for a client. Custom piece. Inspiration. But she wasn't buying it. You've never drawn like this before. That night I locked the sketchpad in the supply cabinet. It was on my workstation the next morning. Open to a new page, a face stared back at me. Mine, but wrong. Like someone had tried to draw me from memory and only got the parts that don't change when you smile. No irises, just pupils, and in each pupil, the crossed eye symbol etched in meticulous detail. I started hearing whispers in the rinse cup. I know how that sounds. But it's true. When I cleaned my machines, the water would bubble faintly, and if I leaned close, I could hear them, faint voices, breathing, words I didn't understand except when I did. Make more doors. Let them in. Bind. 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 I began dreaming about Owen. He stood in a room with no walls, only mirrors. Each mirror showed him tattooed from head to toe, but the tattoos were alive, twisting, pulsing, blinking. One by one, the mirrors shattered and he disappeared. I woke up with ink on my fingers. One morning, Cass didn't show up. I called. No answer. I texted. The message read, "Delivered," then disappeared from the thread. I checked her station. Her gear was gone. Her sketchbook too. But taped to the back of her chair was a note. "I saw what you saw. I'm not letting it in." No signature. Just the eye and needle drawn in thick Sharpie. That's when I realized something. The ink wasn't just cursed. It remembered. Every line I'd ever drawn, every shape my hand had practiced, every symbol I'd traced absent-mindedly while on the phone. It wanted them. It was learning to draw through me. That night, I unpacked the bottle. I stared at it for hours. It pulsed slightly in the glass like it was breathing. I took it to the alley behind the shop. I planned to smash it, but my hand wouldn't let go. Instead, I unscrewed the cap and dipped my finger in. The ink clung to my skin like it belonged there. I smeared it on the wall in a line, then another. The shape took over. I wasn't drawing, I was remembering something I'd never learned. A glyph, not language, not art. A key. When I finished, the wall shimmered, just for a moment, like heat rising from asphalt. Then it was gone. I ran. Back inside, the machines buzzed on their own. 3 needles hovered above 3 empty chairs. Waiting. For who, I don't know. But I felt it. The ink wanted out, and it wanted to spread. The narrator receives a DM on an old tattoo forum. The message is from someone claiming to know about bind ink. It says, "You opened the first gate. There are 7 more. The message sat on my screen, blinking like an open wound. You opened the first gate. There are 7 more. It came from a user I didn't recognize, Echo Vessel 87, on a tattoo artist forum that hadn't been active since 2016. I didn't even remember my password. But somehow the site had logged me in. The inbox was filled with old threads, gear trades, machine tuning tips, bad Yelp review rants, normal stuff. But this was different. I clicked on the profile. No posts, no avatar, no bio. Last seen. Active now. Before I could reply, a second message popped up. Check behind the mirror. The first mark is already there. I stood up so fast I knocked my chair over. The bathroom mirror. I hadn't touched it since that first night. The night Owen said it was whispering. I approached it like it might breathe. At first glance, it was clean, a bit fogged from the morning shower, nothing more. But as I exhaled against the glass, condensation bloomed, revealing a mark, perfectly centered behind the mirror on the wall. I hadn't painted it. I hadn't even known there was wall space back there. I unscrewed the frame. Behind it on the drywall, drawn in dried black ink, a gate, a crude outline shaped like a keyhole, no larger than my palm. In its center, the eye with the needle, and around the edges etched like spider legs, tiny symbols I couldn't recognize, but I felt them, like heat behind the eyes. Like a word stuck in the back of the throat, I snapped a photo and returned to the forum. Me. What is this? Echo Vessel 87, Gate 1. Your shop is the second. Me. Who are you? Echo Vessel 87. Doesn't matter. What matters is closing them before the ink. Binds more. Me. Binds what? Echo Vessel 87. Not what. Who? The cursor blinked. Then Echo Vessel 87 is offline. That night, the dreams came harder. I was standing in my shop, but everything was off. The machines were enormous, 6 feet tall, buzzing like power lines. Clients sat in the chairs, but their heads were gone. Just blank necks. And my hands moved on their own, inking endless lines into their skin, lines that shimmered and slithered like worms. Each tattoo I finished opened a small black circle. From inside each circle, something watched. I woke up sweating through my sheets. The bottle of bind was on the nightstand, even though I had locked it in the drawer at the shop. I checked the shop cameras from my phone. Motion detection had triggered at 3:04 a.m. As always, the footage showed my front door unlocking itself, then swinging open, then static. I didn't go back to sleep. The next morning I reopened the forum. Echo Vessel was still offline. I posted, in the general feed, anyone else heard of Bind Inc? Within an hour, the thread was removed. Account suspended, but one message came through to my email from no reply, nightjarbind.net subject, you're drawing in the dark. Body, there's a third gate. The apprentice left it open, attached, a JPG file. I opened it. It was a photo of Cass's workstation, her chair, her sketchpad. On the far wall, behind a curtain I'd never once drawn back in years, I saw a symbol, gate number 3. I rushed to the shop. The curtain resisted like it had weight. Dust choked the air. Behind it, scratched into the plaster, no ink, just grooves, was the same symbol I'd seen in the email, a third gate. But this one had something else, a name written underneath. Cass. Not in her handwriting, not in mine. The grooves were too deep, like claw marks, like someone had tried to dig it into stone. That's when the lights blew out. Every bulb in the shop popped, all at once. My phone screen lit up, but the signal was gone. On the screen, a new notification, bind tone 4 pkg installed by what? I hadn't downloaded anything. I opened it. It wasn't a file. It was a drawing program, or something pretending to be. One canvas, one brush, black. Only one action available. Draw, gate. I closed the app. It reopened by itself. A whisper filled the room. Low, guttural, like ink bubbling from a deep well. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands wouldn't stop tingling. That's when I noticed my forearm. New mark was forming just below the elbow. It hadn't been tattooed, it was growing, spreading slowly under the skin like ink in water. The same eye and needle, the same gait. I didn't draw this. I didn't ask for this. But the ink, it's in me now, and it remembers every line I ever wanted to make. A customer calls asking for a cover-up tattoo. When the narrator asks what they want to cover, the voice says, "A gate. It opened. I need to close it before it spreads." The call came just after midnight. The shop phone shouldn't have rung. I unplug it every night, but there it was, shrieking in the dark like a wounded animal. I stared at it for a solid 10 seconds before picking up. Nightjar tattoos. My voice cracked. A pause. Then a voice, low and shaking. "You don't know me, but I know what you've done." The silence that followed was longer than it should have been. "Who is this? I need a cover-up, urgently." I almost laughed. "At midnight?" "It's waking up," they whispered. "I can't sleep. I can't think. It's speaking." "What do you want covered?" Another pause. "A gate, just like the ones you've seen." My blood went cold. "Where are you?" "I'm outside." I froze, then turned slowly toward the front of the shop. A shadow was pressed against the frosted glass. Thin, staggered, like it was barely standing. I opened the door. The man stumbled in, clutching his forearm. He wore a long, faded coat, and his face looked like it hadn't seen sunlight in days. His eyes twitched in every direction. "What's your name?" "No names," he said. "No names, it remembers them." He rolled up his sleeve. I stepped back. The mark was similar. The eye, the needle, but more intricate, more evolved. The lines shimmered like oil on water. They bent when I wasn't looking directly at them. "Where did you get this?" He shook. "I made the mistake of trying to cover my own. Tattooed over it, thought I could erase it. It just spread faster, like fire under skin." He sat, trembling. "It whispers through mirrors, through glass, even water. Says there are others, that I was the third." "Third?" He nodded. "You, your apprentice, me." I pulled the light closer. The ink shifted subtly under his skin. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Draw over it again, but don't use your hand. Use its memory, the pattern in your head, the one you've been sketching in your sleep." "I don't remember drawing." "You don't have to. It remembers for you." I hesitated. He gripped my wrist. "Please, it's almost through." Prepped the station with shaking hands. Needle, gloves, rinse, stencil-less. Then I opened the cabinet and pulled out the bind ink. "No," the man said. "Not that." I looked at him. He was crying. "It wants to be used. That's how it spreads." Then, "What am I supposed to use?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a vial. Clear, like water. "This is the opposite," he whispered. Pulled from the negative space, the shadow of the gate, it resists the ink. It seals. I didn't ask how he got it. I just dipped the needle. As I worked, the lines burned into the air, faint and shimmering. He didn't flinch, not once, but the mark fought back. The skin twitched, the ink convulsed. The gate shifted. I saw glimpses, brief flashes, as if the needle was cutting through time. A room with walls made of mirrors, each one cracked. A forest at night, trees bending toward a circle of ink drawn in the dirt. A child, whispering. To her reflection, who whispered back. A mouth opening in the middle of someone's chest. Then the skin went still. The shimmer faded. I sealed the tattoo with film, hands soaked in sweat. The man exhaled like he hadn't in hours. "It's quiet." He stood, then he looked at me. Not scared anymore. Your mark is almost complete. I looked down at my own arm. The new gate had grown, now fully formed, etched beneath the skin like it had been waiting. He opened the door. Before leaving, he turned back one last time. There are 8 gates, he said. Each one feeds the next. You can't close them from this side. Then he vanished into the street. I collapsed into the chair, breathing hard. My phone buzzed. A new message. From Echo Vessel 87 subject, Gate 4 is open, and it's not in your world. The message contains GPS coordinates. The location? A cemetery that hasn't existed since 1974, burned down and erased from all official records. But the coordinates show activity. The coordinates Echo Vessel sent didn't appear on Google Maps. When I copied them into 3 separate mapping apps, each one returned the same thing. No data, no road access, no satellite image available. Just a gray square floating in the middle of a green expanse marked as protected forest land. But my gut knew better. This wasn't forest. This was something that used to be a cemetery. I'd heard the stories in passing, urban legends from the older artists in the scene. A place once called Hollow Pines Rest burned down in the 70s. Some said it was arson, others a lightning strike. But all agreed on one thing. No one was ever buried there again. The next morning, I drove toward the coordinates, winding down forgotten roads that turned from asphalt to dirt to little more than overgrown trail. My phone lost signal an hour before I reached the edge of the old forest. I parked, took my gear, and walked. The woods felt wrong. Trees leaned at odd angles, no birds, no wind, just the crunch of my boots and the low groan of something unseen shifting underground. After nearly an hour, I saw it, a clearing, choked with weeds and black moss. At the center stood what remained of a stone arch, half collapsed, wrapped in rusted wire and dead vines. Just beneath the arch, a slab of stone, cracked, with names worn smooth by time and heat. And above it, painted in black, that hadn't faded, the 4th gate. It wasn't graffiti, it was fresh. I approached carefully. On the slab, I saw a mark, the same eye with a needle, but this time encircled by 8 smaller symbols, one of them pulsing faintly. The 4th. I reached out, and the slab opened. It didn't crack or slide. It dissolved like smoke being sucked into a vacuum. Beneath it, a staircase carved into packed earth and bone. I should have left. Instead, I descended. Each step buzzed with vibration, not mechanical, but alive. The walls were etched with symbols. Some I recognized from my dreams. Others felt like they were being carved into my memory as I walked. At the bottom, a chamber, circular, lined with mirrors. Each mirror showed a different version of me, but tattooed with marks I didn't recognize. My skin in each reflection was a map of symbols, gates, spirals. My eyes were wrong. In the real world, the chamber had only one thing, a chair in the center and a mirror directly in front of it. On the mirror, written in dust, "Sit. Look. Draw what you see." I sat. The moment I did, the ink in my pocket warmed, the bottle of bind. I hadn't meant to bring it, but it was there. I looked into the mirror and saw myself, but not. The version in the mirror had tattoos blooming in real time across their skin, shifting like sea creatures. Their mouth moved in sync with mine until it didn't. It spoke a word I didn't. Bind. Then it held up its arm. There was a new design, a glyph I'd never seen before. It looked like a key twisting into a tree. My hand moved on its own, reaching for the sketchbook in my pack. I started to draw. Each line burned behind my eyes as if I were carving them into my skull. The more I drew, the more my reflection changed. It smiled, and behind the smile, teeth too sharp, too many, the last stroke completed the glyph. The moment I finished, The air collapsed. The mirror shattered. But not outward, inward, like something had pulled the glass into another space, and then footsteps from behind. I turned, heart hammering, nothing, only the stairwell. But when I looked back at the mirror, there was a handprint on the glass. From inside, a voice rang through the chamber. Familiar, distant, echo vessel. You opened the fourth. It knows where you live. Now. My phone buzzed, though it had no signal. The screen glitched. A new tattoo design filled the display. Prepare for the fifth. When the narrator returns to the shop, every blank section of the wall is now covered in stencils of designs he never drew. But all of them bear the eye, and one of them is signed with the name of someone he buried 10 years ago. Someone who was never a client. I knew the signature the moment I saw it. It was burned into the corner of one of the new stencils that had appeared on the walls of my shop overnight, perfectly aligned, sharp as etched glass. Leo V. 10 years dead. My older brother. He was never a client, never even liked tattoos. He used to joke that my machines sounded like insects planning a war. But now his name was signed beneath a design that shimmered with familiar dread. The eye and the needle, framed by thorns twisted into the shape of lungs. And it wasn't just Leo's name. I found 5 more stencils, each with a different name. Cass. Owen. The man from the midnight appointment. One stencil was blank except for the word next, and one bore my name. Above it, a glyph I had never drawn but recognized from the fourth gate, the one shaped like a key twisting into a tree. The air near the stencil felt wrong, like it was vibrating beneath the surface of reality. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the wall until sunrise, waiting for the stencils to vanish, or bleed, or speak. But they just remained there, quiet and patient, like gravestones with nowhere else to be. Then, at 3:04 a.m., the shop door opened. No bell, no footsteps, just the door swinging wide, and in stepped Leo. But not Leo. His clothes were the same from the funeral photo. Black button-up, worn jeans. But his skin looked faded like a photograph left too long in the sun. And his eyes, they were ink black, wide, unblinking. He didn't speak. He walked straight to the stencil with his name and stood before it like someone visiting their own grave. "I buried you," I whispered. "I carried the casket." He tilted his head. "No," a voice said, but not from his mouth. It came from behind me. I spun. The mirror on the far wall shimmered. In it, I was drawing. My reflection sat at the station, machine in hand, dragging ink across skin. But the canvas was blurred. It looked human, but wrong. In the reflection, my brother was already on the table. The machine buzzed to life in the real world. No hands touching it. Then Leo stepped forward. He raised his sleeve, exposing the exact same unfinished glyph I'd seen in the cemetery vision, the one shaped like the key tree. "You left it open," the voice said again. "He's the gate." I shook my head. "You're not him." "No," it replied, through Leo's mouth this time. "I'm what he left behind, what bled through when your grief marked the skin of the world." I backed away, but the walls pulsed. The stencils began to peel, slowly unfolding from the wall like paper flowers turning inside out. From behind them, ink, wet, alive, moving. Each stencil became a door. Each door began to open. The glyphs on the wall crawled. And from the reflection, I watched myself smile. That version of me finished the tattoo. And in that moment, this version of Leo collapsed. Not like a body, like a shadow losing its source. Gone. The machines fell silent. The stencils stopped moving. Only one remained half-peeled, the one with my name. I approached it. Behind it, the wall was no longer drywall. It was a surface of living ink, black, rippling deep, and just beneath its surface, something moved, a face, mine again, distorted. It whispered, "You have 5 days." Then, "The 5th gate requires blood." My phone buzzed. Signal returned, a new message from Echo Vessel. "The reflection has found you. Do not ink anyone else until the 5th is sealed, or it spreads to them too." Attached was a photo. It was the waiting area of my shop, empty except for a new walk-in client. Waiting. The client in the photo has no face, but their arm is already tattooed with the mark from the 4th gate, and they are pointing directly at the camera, as if they know they're being watched. They were already inside when I turned the corner. I don't remember unlocking the door. I don't remember hearing the bell. But there they sat, cross-legged in the waiting area, motionless. Their head tilted slightly to one side like a doll trying to understand a stranger, and they had no face. Just smooth skin stretched across where eyes, nose, and mouth should have been. No seams, no scars, like the features had been erased, but they were breathing. Their chest rose and fell in slow, measured rhythm. I wanted to speak, but my voice failed. My mouth opened, and they turned their head sharply as if hearing the silence. Their arm moved. They pointed directly at the door to the station. Then they stood, walked past me, sat in the client chair, and pulled up their sleeve. There, just below, the elbow, was the 4th mark. The eye, the needle, the pulsing tree key symbol. Fully healed. I should have run. But my hands were already moving, prepping the station, gloving up, wiping down metal with alcohol, even though I didn't remember grabbing it. The bottle of bind was already uncapped. The client never spoke. They simply turned their other arm over, pale and bare, and tapped a finger against the skin 3 times. 3 gates left. My heart slammed in my chest. "Who sent you?" "Nothing." "Are you Echo Vessel?" Stillness. I raised the machine. The needle buzzed. Their skin shimmered slightly like water about to ripple. I hovered over the flesh. I didn't know what I was supposed to draw. I hadn't stenciled anything. No concept. No plan. But then the machine began pulling my hand. It guided me, line after line. A shape formed. I was carving something into flesh that felt like it already existed, like I was just uncovering it with each pass of the needle. Then the lights dimmed, and the mirror on the wall cracked down the middle. A single voice filled the room, not from the client. Not from outside, but from inside me. 5th gate is now awake. I looked down. The tattoo was a door, simple, rectangular, outlined in a twisted loop of barbed wire and flame. In the center, a single eye, open. The moment the needle lifted, the tattoo opened, right there, on their arm, like a hatch unsealing from inside the wound. Whispers. I backed away. The faceless client stood, turned toward the mirror, placed their hand against the cracked glass. The crack sealed itself, but their hand remained inside, like the mirror had taken it, held it, consumed it, and then the client vanished. No sound, no flash, just gone. The only thing left behind was a small slip of paper. On the seat, a name, Leo V again, and a location, not coordinates this time. A building. Familiar. The hospital where my brother died. Below that, a time, 4 a.m. tonight. I stared at it for a long time before realizing the ink on the paper was wet, still drying. My phone buzzed. A new message. Echo Vessel 87. You broke the rule. Me. What rule? Echo Vessel 87. You inked the faceless. The 5th is through. Me. What happens now? Echo Vessel 87. The reflection remembers everything you've forgotten. If you don't close the 6th before dawn, it will finish your name. I looked at my arm. The stencil with my name, the one that had been half peeled, was now fully exposed. The ink beneath shimmered, and my signature was already there. But it wasn't mine. It was in Leo's handwriting. The narrator rushes to the hospital, but every hallway leads back to the same room, room 304. Inside, a patient lies on the bed with a tattooed face turned to the wall. The monitor shows no heartbeat, but the tattoo machine on the table is still running. I arrived at the hospital at 2:46 a.m. The front desk was empty. No security, no receptionist. Just the quiet hum of fluorescent lights and the faint scent of antiseptic, underneath which something sweeter lurked. Metallic, like blood left too long on cold tile. The elevator was dead. I took the stairs. Each step echoed like a drum beat, hollow and steady. I didn't check the signs. I didn't need to. My body knew where to go, as if the glyph burned into my arm had turned into a compass. Room 304. The hallway outside was wrong, too long, too narrow. The overhead lights flickered in rhythmic patterns, on, off, like Morse code. I was too afraid to translate. I passed other rooms. Some had doors open, some had beds. In one, I saw myself, seated in a chair, back turned. In another, Cass stood in front of a mirror, hands pressed against the glass, whispering to a version of herself that smiled too wide. I kept walking. Room 304 waited. The door was ajar. Inside, dim yellow light, a heart monitor flatlined, yet still, powered on. No beeping, just the solid, endless tone of stillness. The patient lay in the bed, covered in a white sheet, but I could see the tattoos, crawling from beneath the collar, up the neck, across the cheeks and forehead. Familiar symbols. Gates, keys, thorns, eyes, all in bind ink. I stepped closer. The face was turned toward the wall. Slowly, I reached out and turned it. It was me, or what I would become if the ink took everything. The skin pulsed like it remembered being alive. The eyes were open, black and bottomless, and the mouth moved without breath. It whispered, "Finish, the name." Then the tattoos began to move. They slithered, realigning into new glyphs, ones I didn't recognize. The heart monitor began to beat again, but not a human rhythm. It was in eights, like a clock counting down. 7, 6, 5. The tattoo machine on the nearby tray activated. Buzzed violently. I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut. The lights went out. When they came back on, I was no longer alone. Leo stood by the bed, or rather the version of him that haunted the shop. Ink-black eyes, arms marked with the gates. The last glyph, the 8th, glowed faintly on his wrist. He held the machine. "You've been drawing gates your whole life," he said. "You just didn't know where they led. I didn't ask for this. You mourned me with ink. You opened the first gate with grief." He stepped forward. "Now it's your turn." He offered me the machine. I didn't take it, but my hand moved anyway. It gripped the machine. The hum grew louder. The glyph on my arm pulsed. "Where's the 6th gate?" I asked. He pointed to my reflection in the mirror. "You." I turned. My reflection stepped forward, out of sync, out of phase. It wasn't mimicking me anymore. It was observing. Then it opened its mouth, and from it spilled a flood of ink, black, boiling, alive. It splashed across the floor, climbed the walls, seeped into the ceiling. I screamed, swung the machine toward the mirror, and stabbed it. Glass shattered inward. The ink froze. The heartbeat stopped, and the reflection collapsed, folding into itself like a crumpled page. I was alone. Leo was gone. The room reset. White walls, empty bed, machine silent. On the floor, in dried ink, a single phrase remained. One gate remains. I left the hospital at dawn. The sun didn't rise right. The light came sideways, casting shadows in directions they shouldn't go. Back at E. The shop. The stencils were gone. The mirrors were clean. The bind bottle was empty, but the reflection still isn't mine. I know the 8th gate is near. I just don't know where or who will draw it. Maybe you've seen it. Maybe it's already marked you. If you've ever woken up at 3:04 a.m. for no reason, maybe you weren't alone. Maybe the ink remembers you. Subscribe if you want to know how. This ends. And tell me, have you ever seen something in the mirror that moved too late? Or worse, moved first?